Every night, like clockwork, I'd find my trash can tipped over, trash scattered across my lawn, duct tape torn, receipts blowing into the street. Then I caught her on camera, HOA President Karen, smirking as she kicked it over again. But what she didn't know, I'd already installed something she'd never see coming. Something that didn't just catch her in the act. Something that exposed everything. The fines, the threats, the midnight sabotage. It all led to one explosive moment at the quarterly meeting. When the screen lit up and her face went pale, the entire neighborhood fell silent. What played on that screen changed everything. Want to know what happens when a quiet homeowner finally fights back? Life in Cedar Hollow was supposed to be peaceful. White fences, blooming azaleas, and the kind of quiet where you could hear kids laughing 3 streets over. I moved in 3 years ago after a messy divorce, looking for a fresh start. Just me, my golden retriever, Buddy, and a modest 2-bedroom I'd spent every spare dollar fixing up. I loved the porch light glow at dusk, the way the neighbors waved without even knowing my name at first. Felt like belonging. I kept to myself, mowed the lawn on Saturdays, recycled like a good citizen, and even brought cookies to the block party. I wasn't flashy, didn't blast music or leave tools in the yard. But I did have one small habit, leaving my trash can at the curb overnight. The pickup was early, sometimes as early as 5:30 a.m., and I didn't want to risk missing it. So I'd roll it out Friday night and bring it back Saturday morning. Harmless, right? Then came the first notice that IT sat in my mailbox like a slap. Violation of Section 7.3. Trash receptacles must be stored out of public view by 8 p.m. on collection day. I laughed at first. Seriously? That's when I first heard the name whispered at the mailbox cluster. Karen Whitmore, HOA President. Retired paralegal. She takes rules very seriously, one neighbor said with a nervous glance. Once fined the Johnsons for painting their door navy instead of approved heritage blue. I paid the $50 fine, annoyed but not alarmed. I follow the rule. But that night, I rolled the can back by 7:45. Still, the next morning overturned. Garbage spilled. Coffee grounds in the grass. Buddy nearly ate a rotting banana peel. I chalked it up to raccoons. But it happened again, and again, always on Friday nights, always after I'd complied. Then I checked the security cam. There she was, silk scarf, pastel cardigan, gloved hands gripping the trash can like it offended her personally. She gave it a sharp kick, watched it crash, then walked away like she'd just done the neighborhood a favor. That's when I realized. This wasn't about rules. This was about power, and Karen was just getting started. The first fine was a warning. The second was a message. By the third, I realized this wasn't about trash cans anymore. It was about control. Karen didn't stop with the overturned bin. A week after I caught her on camera, another notice appeared, this time in a bright red envelope. Violation of Landscaping Ordinance 4.1. Unapproved ground cover in front yard. I stared at it, then at my yard. I'd planted creeping thyme along the walkway, low maintenance, drought-resistant, and on the HOA's own approved drought-tolerant species list from 2 years prior. I dug up the old newsletter, printed it, and submitted it to the board with a polite note that no response. The fine doubled. Then came the fourth notice. Structural modification without prior approval, front porch swing. I nearly laughed. The swing had been there since I moved in. It was even listed in the realtor's photos. I called the HOA office, asked to speak to someone, anyone besides Karen. The receptionist mumbled something about board discretion and hung up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, receipts and violation letters spread like a crime scene. 5 fines in 6 weeks. $425. For a porch swing. For time. For a trash can. My hands shook. Not from anger. Yet. But from the slow, sinking dread that I was being hunted. I wasn't the only one. I started paying attention. Mrs. Delgado, 2 doors down, had been fined for hanging a wind chime. The Parkers had to remove their electric Christmas lights. Asterisk in December asterisk. Because they weren't incandescent warm white. One guy, a college professor, got hit with a $200 fee for letting his grass grow an inch over the mandated 2.5-inch limit during a drought. They don't care about the rules, he told me quietly over the fence. They care about making people feel small. But Karen was different. She didn't just enforce the rules. She curated them. She'd resurrect bylaws from 2003 that hadn't been enforced in a decade. She'd interpret vague clauses like excessive noise to include my dog barking at a raccoon at 10:15 p.m. I got a formal warning. Yes, really? And still, she kept knocking over my trash can. Every Friday night, like clockwork. I wanted to call the police. But what would I say? My HOA president is dumping my garbage as a form of psychological warfare? They'd think I was crazy. So I did something crazier. I bought a new trash can. Not just any can. A smart one. Stainless steel, motion-activated lights, Wi-Fi enabled, with a 360-degree camera built into the lid. I ordered it under a fake name, had it shipped to my sister's house, and installed it on a Friday evening like it was nothing. I programmed it to record in night vision, save clips to the cloud, and, most importantly, activate audio when motion was detected above a certain threshold. I even painted it the exact same color as the old one. No suspicion. Friday night came. I stayed awake, phone in hand, waiting. Then, ping. Motion detected. I clicked the app. There she was. Karen. In her ridiculous lavender raincoat, even though it wasn't raining. She walked right up to the can, reached out, and kicked it. But this time, the can didn't just fall at IT spoke. A calm, robotic voice echoed through the quiet street. Asterisk, unscheduled waste removal attempt detected. Recording in progress. This incident will be reported to local authorities. Asterisk. Karen froze her face. Caught in infrared green. Went from smug to stunned in half a second. She looked around wildly, like the streetlights were judging her. Then she kicked it again, harder. The voice returned. Asterisk. Second violation logged. Facial recognition in progress. Alerting homeowner and law enforcement in 10, 9. Asterisk. She bolted. I nearly dropped my phone laughing. But I didn't stop there. I reviewed the footage. Clear as day. Her face. Her voice. Her little ritual. And something else. Something I hadn't expected. In the background. As she fled, I heard a second voice. Faint. From her backyard. Did you get it, Karen? A man. Familiar. I enhanced the audio. It was Carl, the HOA treasurer. Her husband. They were in this together. And that's when I realized. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. I started digging. The HOA financial reports were public record. I filed a request. 2 weeks later, I got them. And what I found made my blood run cold. Over the past 18 months, the HOA had issued 87 fines totaling over $19,000. Most were for minor, subjective violations, and 68% of those fines were contested, but only 3 were ever overturned. The rest? Paid under protest or ignored until the HOA filed liens. But here's the kicker. The HOA's legal defense fund had only been used twice. Yet they'd collected over $12,000 in legal reserve fees from homeowners every year. Where was the money going? I cross-referenced names. Found a landscaping company, Cedar Creek Maintenance, billing the HOA $3,000 a month for common area upkeep. But when I drove by the so-called common areas, they looked like they hadn't been touched in months. Then I checked the business registration. Owner, Caroline Whitmore. Karen's sister. It was a scam. A quiet, bureaucratic, perfectly legal-looking scam. Fines to intimidate. Fake services to siphon funds. And Karen? She wasn't just petty. She was running a racket. I saved everything: videos, financial records, violation logs, audio clips. I encrypted it. Backed it up. Then I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I requested an emergency board meeting. Asterisk. Pursuant to Bylaw 5.7. I hereby call for a special session to address financial irregularities, abuse of authority, and unlawful harassment of a homeowner. Asterisk. I sent it certified mail. CC'd every board member. Even slipped a copy under every neighbor's door. The response was immediate. 2 days later, a letter arrived, on official HOA letterhead. Asterisk. After review. Your request for a special meeting has been denied due to insufficient evidence and disruptive intent. Further attempts to incite unrest may result in legal action. Asterisk signed, Karen Whitmore, President. But they made one mistake. They used the HOA's official email server to send it. And that server? It was linked to a public portal. A portal I now had access to. Because when you find someone enough, they stop being a victim and start becoming a threat. You think the trash can was the end of it? No, it was just the beginning. Image 7. Mark at the podium, financial records on screen. The night of the quarterly HOA meeting arrived like a storm rolling in. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. The community clubhouse was packed. Way more than usual. People who hadn't shown up in years were there. Folding chairs filled every inch, kids squirming in the back, neighbors whispering like they knew something was about to go down. I sat near the front, heart pounding, USB drive tucked in my pocket like a weapon. Karen entered like a queen, blazer pressed, hair coiffed, clipboard in hand. She smiled at the crowd, waved at her husband Carl, and took her place at the podium. Another successful quarter, she began, voice smooth as glass. Delinquent fines are down. Landscaping is pristine, and our community standards remain strong. A few polite claps, nods, business as usual. Then I stood up. Every head turned. I'd like to make a public comment, I said, voice steady. Karen's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed just slightly. You have 3 minutes. Please keep it relevant. I'll only need 2, I said. I pulled out my laptop, connected it to the projector they used for budget slides, and clicked play. The screen lit up, silence. Then, footage. Karen in her lavender coat, kicking my trash can. The robotic voice. Asterisk, facial recognition in progress. Alerting law enforcement. Asterisk, her panicked retreat. The audio clip of Carl saying, asterisk, did you get it, Karen? Asterisk gasps rippled through the room. Before anyone could react, I clicked again. Next slide. The HOA's financial records. Highlighted payments. $3,000 a month. To Cedar Creek Maintenance. Then a photo of the overgrown park behind the clubhouse. Then the business registration. Owner, Caroline Whitmore. Another click. A spreadsheet. 87 fines in 18 months. 68% issued to single residents. 79% of those were paid under threat of lien. And not one dime of that money had gone into legal defense or community improvements. The room erupted. People turned to each other. She's been fining us to pay her sister's fake landscaping company? She fined me $150 for a bird feeder. She told me my mailbox was non-compliant. It was the same model as hers. Karen stood frozen. Her face went pale, then flushed red. This is unauthorized. You have no right to access HOA data. I filed a public records request, I said calmly. And the server logs show you accessed my personal violation history 14 times in the past 2 months. From your home IP address. Care to explain why the HOA president is stalking a homeowner? Carl jumped up. This is defamation. We're calling our lawyer. You do that, I said, clicking again. The final video played. It was the night she knocked over my trash can, the first time. But this time the audio was clear. As she walked away, she muttered to herself, asterisk, let's see how long Mr. Quiet Neighbor lasts when his yard looks like a landfill. They'll force him out. Then we can finally sell that lot to the Parkers. They'll pay cash. And we get the commission. Asterisk. The room went dead silent. Everyone turned to Karen. Even Carl looked stunned. Because now it wasn't just about rules. Or fines. Or trash. It was about profit. About collusion. About using her position to manipulate property values, pressure homeowners out, and line her family's pockets. A woman in the back stood up. Mrs. Delgado. She fined me $200 for hanging a piñata at my grandson's birthday, she said, voice shaking. Said it was visual clutter. My piñata. Another neighbor. I got a lien notice because I left my kid's bike on the porch for 2 hours. Then an older man in a flannel shirt stood. I've lived here 22 years, never missed a meeting, and I never voted for you to have this kind of power. Karen tried to speak. This is This is taken out of context. Then explain the money, someone shouted. The commission? Another voice fired back. She looked around, really looked, and for the first time, I saw it. Not anger, not defiance. Fear. She backed away from the podium. Carl tried to block the screen, but people stood up, blocking him. The vice president of the board, a quiet woman named Linda who I'd never heard speak, grabbed the microphone. This meeting is adjourned, she said firmly. An independent audit of HOA finances will begin immediately, and I'm filing a motion to suspend President Whitmore pending investigation. The room didn't clap. They cheered. People came up to me afterward, hugged me, thanked me, said they'd been too scared to speak up, that they'd paid fines they couldn't afford just to avoid the stress. I didn't feel like a hero, that I felt like someone who'd finally said no, when everyone else was too tired to try. But as I packed up my laptop, Karen pushed through the crowd, face tight, voice low. You think you've won? She hissed. You have no idea what you've just started. And for a second, I hesitated. Because in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The weeks that followed the meeting moved like a slow-motion avalanche, quiet at first, then unstoppable. The independent audit was launched within 48 hours. A neutral third-party firm, mandated by state law after a petition signed by 37 homeowners, more than a third of the community. Karen was suspended from the HOA board with immediate effect. Carl resigned as treasurer the same day. Cedar Creek Maintenance shut down within a week. No licenses, no insurance, just a shell company funneling money into Karen's sister's offshore account. The fines? All 87 of them were reviewed. Over 60 were officially voided, deemed arbitrary, inconsistently enforced, or outright retaliatory. The HOA was ordered to refund $14,200 to affected homeowners. Not a full victory. Some liens had already done real damage, but enough to breathe again. And the trash can. It became a symbol. People started leaving theirs out overnight. Asterisk on purpose. Asterisk some painted them with slogans. Asterisk, I survived the HOA witch hunt. Asterisk one neighbor turned his into a planter. Filled it with sunflowers. Another rigged his with a speaker that played We Are the Champions. When tipped over. I didn't need revenge. I just needed peace. But peace, I learned, doesn't come from winning. It comes from changing the game. The new HOA board was elected 3 months later. No more self-appointed rulers. Term limits. Transparent voting. Financial reports posted online monthly. I didn't run for president. I didn't want power. But I did volunteer for the bylaws committee. And we rewrote nearly half the rulebook, cutting the absurd, clarifying the vague, and adding a grievance protection clause so no one could be fined for speaking up. Even the trash rule was revised. Asterisk waste containers may remain at the curb between 4 a.m. and 8 p.m. on collection day, provided they are removed by the following morning. Asterisk. Simple, fair, human. But the real change wasn't on paper. It was in the air. Neighbors started talking again. Not just polite nods, but real conversations. Block parties returned. Kids played in driveways. Someone even started a community garden on the old overgrown lot Karen had ignored for years. I got a letter 6 months later from Mrs. Delgado. Asterisk, thank you. Asterisk, she wrote. Asterisk, I hung my wind chime back up, and I didn't care if she saw it. Asterisk, I smiled, because that was the point. Not the fines, not the cameras, not even the public humiliation. It was about reclaiming the right to live without fear of petty tyranny. But then, just when I thought it was over, something unexpected happened. A reporter from the local news reached out that they'd heard about the trash can rebellion and wanted to do a feature. I hesitated. Didn't want attention. But they weren't just interested in me. They wanted to talk about the pattern. Because after our story broke, other communities started speaking up. A woman in Arizona exposed her HOA for fining her $1,200 for a pink flamingo, a gift from her late mother. A man in Florida revealed his HOA had secretly recorded private backyard gatherings using hidden cameras. In Texas, an entire neighborhood voted to dissolve their HOA after discovering the president had been pocketing dues for 5 years. Suddenly, We weren't just a story. We were a movement.my video, uploaded on a whim after the meeting, got 2.3 million views in 2 weeks. Comments poured in asterisk. This happened to me. I paid $300 for a mailbox. They told me my dog was too loud. He's a Chihuahua. Asterisk people weren't just angry. They were awake. And the craziest part? HOA regulations are barely monitored. In most states, these boards operate with the power of a government body, but zero accountability. No oversight. No appeals process. Just a handful of neighbors with too much time and a clipboard full of petty rules that I started a website. Asterisk HOA Survivors Network asterisk. A place to share stories, legal resources, and strategies for pushing back. Within a month, it had 15,000 members. We helped a single mom in Georgia stop a lien over a dandelion in her lawn. We supported a veteran in Colorado who was fined for flying the American flag at half-mast. Asterisk because it wasn't the approved size. Asterisk and me, I still live in Cedar Hollow. My porch sways in the breeze. Buddy barks at raccoons without fear of fines. And every Friday night, I roll out my trash can. Now a custom model with a license plate that reads, asterisk, Karen didn't see this coming. I won't say everything's perfect, but it's fair. And that's worth fighting for. So here's the truth they don't tell you about HOAs. They only have power when you let them. They thrive in silence, in fear, in the belief that complaining makes you difficult. But when one person says no, when one person hits record, files a request, or stands up at a meeting, something shifts. The illusion of control cracks. And suddenly everyone remembers, this is supposed to be home. Not a dictatorship. Not a joke. Asterisk home. So if you're watching this, and you're dealing with your own Karen, your own fine for a flower pot, your own midnight trash sabotage, your own slow suffocation under rules that make no sense. Know this, you're not crazy. You're not alone. And you don't have to take it, because sometimes all it takes is one trash can, point one camera, point one voice. To change everything. What will you do when they come for your trash can?